What is up, guys? Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be discussing all of the movies I saw during the month of January. Now, this month I had a lot of free time, so I watched a lot of movies, 14 total, I believe. And I figured, why not now? Why not boot up the YouTube channel? Why not get some discussion going? Have some fun with it. I really like talking about movies. I kind of miss working in a movie theater for that reason. I like kind of bouncing ideas off of people, getting some preferences, some recommendations. So I said, yeah, I'll just rank these movies in order of the least I liked to the most. And a little bit of a warning about that. It is going to be my opinion, not objective fact. Obviously, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Just need to say that. Obviously, some people see movies they don't like, but they know they're good movies, and they see movies that they basically know are bad movies, but they like them. So there's going to be a little bit of a balance here between how I do the scales. And without further ado, let's do the 14 movies I saw. These movies are going to range from brand new movies to anything to VOD, old movies I wanted to catch up on. So this is going to be all over the place. Hopefully going forward, there's going to be a little bit more structure to what I do, with the movies I see, hopefully newer movies, some recommendations, tier lists. But yeah, for now, let's just get into the 14 movies I saw during the month of January, starting with the worst. Coming in at number 14, the worst movie I saw during the month of January was Terror Train 2. Now, this movie was a Tubi exclusive. And it's a horror movie that's kind of a remake of the old Jamie Lee Curtis movie. I mean, the name gives it away, Terror Train. It's a slasher movie on a train where they have a birthday party or a getaway party, and everyone's wearing costumes, and oh, we don't know where the killer is. The thing about this movie, and not to get into any spoilers and stuff, if you some reason you want to watch this movie, is as opposed to the first one that Tubi remade, there's just like nothing that happens in this movie. Every single scene is just a guy in a costume walking around and somebody saying, "Hey, like John, why are you acting like that?" And then like the guy just walks up and like stabs them. There's literally no suspense to the kills. The acting is terrible, and there's like this weird forced romance between this like 50-year-old magician and like a high school student. It's like it's just bad. Don't watch it. It literally doesn't do anything well. Coming in at number 13, the movies I didn't like this month is Mind Cage, which is also on Tubi. Now, this movie actually has like a pretty decent cast. It has like Martin Lawrence, John Malkovich, and this movie kind of caught traction on TikTok a little bit. I was seeing all these clips. It was being rivaled to Silence of the Lambs, like kind of how the plot works. And this movie kind of follows two cops. They have to interview this killer called the Artist, and he's helping them catch a duplicate killer. Now, where this movie goes off the wheels, and again, I can't spoil it, this one's actually possibly worth a watch for the twist. The twist is there are no there are no words for the twist in this movie. It kind of starts off a little bit decent at the beginning, and then the final 20 minutes of this movie probably has the worst twist I've ever seen in a movie. So much I'm laughing thinking about it. So I'm not going to really get into the plot of this one. It's a stereotypical, duo detectives with the help of a serial killer catching another guy, a ripoff of Silence of the Lamb, but it has the worst twist ever, so that's why it's so low on the list. Coming in at number 12 is the first of the list, which is Terror Train, which is the Tubi version of it. It's not the sequel that was the worst. Now, as I said, this movie is a remake from back in the day, and the difference between this and the old one is at least like culty. The mask the guy's wearing, the conductor, the kills. This movie has nothing going on for it. There's a forced romance between this weird magician guy who's like 50 years old and like all the high schools and college students on the train. Every single kill in the movie, just like the first one, is a guy who will kill a guy. He'll take a costume and then he'll walk around as that guy in the costume, and everyone will go, "What are you doing, Mike? Man, like, come on, Mike, we haven't been talking all day." And he'll just like turn the corner with them and stab them and like take their costume. And this happens for like an hour and a half, 20 minutes in between. There's nothing original. The acting's terrible. And then, like the movie above, it has a twist. I mean, I guess I'll give it give it whatever for the twist. I predicted the twist. It's not hard to predict. Just a super forgettable slasher. Honestly, this movie's not good at all, but it's kind of lower on the list because I watched a lot of culty movies this month. Coming in at number 11 is the Oscar darling from a few years ago, A Ghost Story. Now, I feel like this movie is everything they talk about when they talk about like an artsy fartsy. This movie was created solely to get an Oscar. Like nothing they're doing is revolutionary at all. And basically, if you're unfamiliar with the movie, it's kind of like an indie love tale about Casey Affleck. He dies in a car crash. His wife misses him, and the way they do this is a play on the guy's ghost spirit actually just walking around with a bed sheet with the eyes cut out. So like you got this weird like kid's Halloween costume that's just like stumbling around the movie with no lines, and it's supposed to be like this really emotional tale of the ghost in the background. But where this movie fails is where a lot of these Oscar movies fail, where it's very obvious early on like what the metaphor to this movie is. You know, death is sad, life moves on without you, the world will keep moving on without you. He's destined to kind of see life move on without him, all of his missed opportunities. But where this movie really fails, and it's funny, like this movie turned me into the Joker. I was sitting in front of my living room, and there's a scene where the main actress is eating a pie, and it's obvious she's sad. She's eating a pie, and it's like, oh man, like you can see like the guilt is kind of, her performance is pretty decent, but it's a 5 minute still shot of her eating a pie. I was losing it. At a certain point, I was like, fuck the camera. Like, how much pie do I need to watch this woman eat? And it kept doing that. This is the type of movie that will just take a shot like my still in the background. And it'll sit there, just like I just did for like 5 minutes. And you're like, what is going on? And it's like, so yeah, I mean, this movie's a sleep remedy. The only reason it gets a little bit of, ambition to me is maybe this is the point of the movie. Maybe I was supposed to just sit there so zoned out and bored that I just like debated existentialism or something. But the actual movie itself is easily, in my memory, one of the most boring, pointless movies ever. And honestly, it's not even that sad. Like, they're going for a sad ghost story. Like, I'd rather just watch, Marley and Me or something. Coming in at number 10 is another movie you can get VOD or stream. It's been out for a while. Ghosts of War. Now, this movie has like Alan Ritchson, the guy who's playing the new Jack Reacher. It has some other actors you've probably heard of. I'm not familiar with their names. And it's just a very generic movie. This movie is a movie about soldiers during World War II. They go to occupy this plantation house while they're hiding from the Nazis. And there's like a ghost story play on it where the house is haunted. Now, the problem I have with this movie is it's kind of like a weird hodgepodge of like the guys in the army and the crew and the ghost story of like the house being haunted. But the ghost story and the houses being haunted was just legitimately not interesting. It was like a boring play on it. Like there were predictable jump scares when there wasn't much happening, like a book will fall off a shelf or something. And I just found myself the whole time thinking like, I would rather just watch these guys like do a war movie. Like the actual war part and like the way like the crew acted together was actually pretty interesting. Like I kind of was engaged with like the crew itself. Like, but this movie all suffers from its like kind of some of the movies above. It has one of the worst twists I've ever seen that absolutely just destroys the entire foundation of the movie till you're saying like, I don't even know like what the metaphorical point of why they're showing this is. This is just so out of place. It was like obviously something to set itself aside in the genre, and obviously it didn't work because most people haven't heard of this movie. Coming in at number 9 is Premium Rush, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Now this movie came out a couple years ago when I did work in a movie theater. I believe I saw it then, but I didn't remember. It also has some other actors like Michael Shannon, and I can't remember the other person, but this is a movie about a guy who works as like a messenger biker in New York during rush hour. And the actual action in this movie of the bikes going around and him needing to get the messages to the people on time is actually pretty well done, to the point I was thinking, like, is this an actual career? Because if people are actually doing this in real life, like, pay those guys $100,000 because that's how to be like the highest death risk ever. And it kind of has like a little backstory of like Michael Shannon, this corrupt cop. He's after the messenger who takes a message he needs. I found all that interesting. I really like Michael Shannon. It kind of tapers off towards the end. I mean, like the action and all that type of stuff. I kind of really liked this movie's first half where it was really into the bike, but once the little chase goes on with the detective, it kind of lasts for too long. And it's definitely not bad. It's a little bit of a forgettable action thriller, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Just a bit above that is Straw Dogs, the remake. Now, I watched this movie because James Marsden was in it, and I saw the show Jury Duty, and I really liked him in that show. I'm also a huge fan of the Skarsgård brother who's in that movie, so I was like, this cast is like really underrated for when it came out. And I actually really like the setup to this movie. It's a movie about this couple who moves to the rural South, and it's kind of that stereotypical movie of like actor, Hollywood, superficial guy comes to the rural South and they don't accept him. And basically, they just keep messing with the family. They keep messing with the guy's wife who used to live there. She was like a sweetheart of the town. The Skarsgård brother who's working on their roof, he obviously had a fling with her in the past, so there's like this big drama going on. And this movie, just like some of the others, is not bad. I actually enjoyed a lot of the dynamics. I thought the acting was good. Besides James Woods, he's like the biggest caricature in this movie ever. It just falls off really bad. Like after like the first half of the movie, it just kind of like goes on for too long. It's also kind of like the most over the top like depiction ever of the rural South, where they're all over the top caricature, like racisty, angry, like you're not part of this town. Where it's like, dude, like I get it, it's for a movie, but I don't know, it's kind of struck me weird. Like it was a forced narrative. The actors didn't really sell me that that's what that cast of people would have been like. Coming in at number 7 is Sick, which is like the COVID darling slasher from a couple years ago. Now, I had like high ambitions for this movie when it came out. I was actually pretty excited. I just didn't have Peacock Premium because I'm not paying for all of them. But I actually got to see it recently, and I heard mixed things about it. I heard it was kind of a forgettable movie, and it kind of is. It does like kind of an interesting job on the whole like COVID, like how people used to act and the weirdness of. There's this scene where this guy goes to get in the car and she's like, help, I'm being chased. And the girl's like, you don't have a mask. And it's like, it's got some of these like funny, like little plays that kind of like pick fun at like how people used to act and how over the top it was. So you can kind of have a gist, like a laugh at it. If this is not something that affected you personally, like you didn't lose a loved one or something to COVID. The problem with this movie is it is a very forgettable slasher, from the twist or the way it's set up, like the kills. There's nothing really in this movie where you're like watching it and you're like, okay, this is actually pretty cool. It's basically the most run of the mill slash you will ever see. It just has, it has like a little play on COVID. So I didn't mind it. I thought it was kind of interesting, especially the first half. Just kind of forgettable. Coming in at number 6 is another movie that's not too old, and that is Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds. Now, this is like a rom-com slash action thriller about this guy who figures out he's an NPC in a video game. And he kind of like through AI learning becomes like self-aware and he starts improving. And I actually really like this movie, honestly. I was back home and someone put it on and said, hey, you got to watch this movie. And it started and I was like, oh no, it's another Ryan Reynolds movie. Like we've seen all the stuff. We've heard all the jokes. And it was actually a pretty fun time, honestly. There's like some cringy over the top stuff in this movie, like all Ryan Reynolds comedies, but I thought this movie was at the strongest when it was at like its rom-com between the real life player and him as an NPC, and kind of the dynamics of how weird that is. Like, that there's an AI that can kind of be self-aware and think that he's in love, and like it kind of goes over the top at the end, but it's a Ryan Reynolds movie. It's a comedy. I enjoyed this movie. I would actually recommend this movie to anyone who likes Ryan Reynolds movies. I think it's right up there with like, that Deadpool style of comedy. So if you like that, like Hitman's Bodyguard, you'll probably really like this movie. Coming in at number 5 is an age-old movie, but it's a classic, The Hitcher. And I'd never seen the original Hitcher. I saw the remake a couple of years ago. I wasn't too fond of it. And I've had relatives who've kind of talked up The Hitcher their whole life. They've been like, yeah, The Hitcher's so scary. You got to watch this movie. And whenever I'd see clips of it, I was like, this movie's like, it doesn't look that scary. And I decided I'd pick it up, and I'm actually really glad I did. I think The Hitcher is kind of like a masterpiece for that genre, looking back. I think the main actor is great at playing the serial killer. I think the main character's kind of like progression as a kid. He kind of starts off as this cowardly kid, and he starts becoming this like, he doesn't even care anymore. Like he's so tormented by this guy. I think it's just a really good movie for the day it came out. The practical effects are great. I was really surprised by how much action is in this movie. When I heard about The Hitcher, I thought it was going to be this like slasher take on like a hitchhiker, which it is, but this guy is kind of like omnipresent. There's car explosions. There's a police chase with a helicopter. It's all done practically where they're actually rolling cars. I would highly recommend this movie. If you like slasher movies and you haven't seen The Hitcher, absolutely recommend. I think it's a great time. Hour and a half movie or so, short, brief watch, and went by fast for me. Coming in at number 4, another movie I've got a lot of recommendations to watch. I've seen a lot of stuff online, and that is Dog Soldiers. Now, this is a weird movie because I believe it's an English or a British film. I'm not particularly sure. And it's like always heralded as like the werewolf movie online in the horror community. Like, you need to see Dog Soldiers. And I looked up the cover, I looked up the actors, and I was like, I'm kind of not sold on this movie. And one day I was like, I'm just gonna watch this movie. Like, I don't watch a lot of werewolf movies. I'm in the mood for like a creature movie. Started off, it's a run of the mill army movie. I was kind of like, oh, I don't like the way they're filming this with like the grainy camera. And it really has like an original Predator vibe to it once it gets going. How you start to like really like the crew, like the jokes, the commentary, the dialogue. I thought it was like really good, like to the point where I was like having a good time hanging out with this army crew. I was like, oh, don't kill those guys. And where this movie really succeeds is it's very self-aware. It's probably about 60% horror movie, 40% like English comedy, where it's like so over the top, the dialogue. It reminds me of another movie called Red Snow. It's like a Nazi zombie movie. Right up there with that. And I think when this movie gets going and it's knee deep, it is so fun. I had so much fun. I might have had the most fun with this movie of any movie on this list, where I was like, okay, I'm having a good time watching these guys just pinned up in a house. It felt like a Nazi zombies from Call of Duty movie, and it's just so over the top. I highly recommend this movie to anybody who likes werewolves. At number 3 is a movie I also heard a lot about. I haven't been able to find it until recently, and that's Frailty with Bill Paxton. Now, I love Bill Paxton. It's a shame the guy had to pass away so soon. He directed this movie. It stars Matthew McConaughey, him, and has a very unique plot for a horror movie. It's about this guy, and one day he goes to his kids and he says, God has called upon me. I need to slay demons. And the kids are like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, I have a list. And the list of demons is a list of real people. And one of the younger sons is like, yeah, cool, Dad. And the other one's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, that ain't it. And it's kind of done really well because Bill Paxton is just this like awesome, loving father. It's not this whole like stepfather play where like he's ruining Amityville horror. Like, no, like he legitimately loves his kids, and this is like something he's called upon to do in his mind. And it begs a lot of like really interesting questions of, what would you do if like a loved one just told you this and like you thought they were crazy, but they were like absolutely convinced this was true. The dynamic of being a kid and being powerless. I think this movie's an absolute classic. Since it came out and I watched it, I've recommended this movie to about 3 or 4 of the people I know, and been like, you need to see this movie. And all of them said they really liked it. So I would 100% recommend this movie. If you like Bill Paxton, you like that old 90s, early 2000 thriller. Not super gory. It's kind of more of like a horror thriller, psychological thriller. I thought it was a great movie. Coming in at number 2 is a foreign film. Another movie that a lot of people herald as like kind of like a king of the genre. Zombies this time, is Train to Busan. Now, I heard a lot about this movie for years. And what this movie does that's really, really well, in my opinion, is the zombies are absolutely fantastic in this movie. Like, that cast knocks it out of the park. They're so over the top. They're so well acted, choreography. These things feel smothering in the movie. And there's not a lot of times where I watch movies where I watch a zombie movie and I'm like, oh, the zombies are threatening. It's kind of more of like a survival tale. In this movie, it's like, oh, if these zombies see you, like, you're going down. Like, you're not going to live. And there's this tale of a dad trying to take his daughter to see their mom on the train to Busan. And they kind of all just get the infection is spreading on the train. And they're kind of screwed because this is like one of these like super rabid zombie strains. They're corrupting the whole train. And they're just like, it's an isolated, one of those, like, it takes place in a single spot. And what I think this movie does really, really well is it fleshes out the characters of the dad, the daughter, some other like people you meet on the train that they kind of become like in the cahoots with. They got to help each other survive. They start off hating each other. I just think it does a very, very good job at character progression to the point where you really feel for every one of these characters, the ones that live, the ones who die, how they die. I think this movie is an absolute masterpiece to the point where almost immediately after it, I said, like, that's got to be my favorite zombie movie. It's got to be in recent memory. Besides, like, maybe the 28 days later, 28 weeks later, some of those, I'd have to go back and watch them. immediately top 5 zombie movie, no doubt. Amazing movie. And coming in at my favorite movie of the month of January in 2024 is actually the newest movie I saw, kind of unexpected, and that is The Beekeeper with Jason Statham. Now, this movie is a movie I didn't expect a whole lot about. Like, we all know Jason Statham's stick at this point, but I saw the commercials, I saw the trailer, and I was like, I mean, I've seen him do better stuff, like The Transporter. He always plays a profession, by the way, so he's a beekeeper. And where this movie excels is it's so over the top and it's so self-aware. This guy is a beekeeper, aka like an assassin, who's also a beekeeper, a legitimate beekeeper. So he's like two types of beekeepers at the same time. And it's just a movie filled with bee puns, talking about the hive. Like every single scene in this movie is self-aware of how ridiculous it is, to the point where I actually think this movie might be a better time and it might be more ridiculous than John Wick. I'm so surprised at how critically well this movie's doing because it's a Jason Statham movie, but like it's legitimately good. It's funny. The kills are great. It's just this guy going badass for like 2 hours straight, puns. It's so good. Just go see this movie. I mean, I'm not going to go into any more of it. I might make like an individual series where, I re-review some of these favorite ones, get into a little bit more depth. But yeah, The Beekeeper was my favorite movie of January 2024. I thought it was amazing. Immediately going to buy it. So that is all, guys. Those are my movies for the month of January 2024. Like I said, I got some more content coming. I'm going to be doing some tier list maybe of like iconic franchises, some horror stuff, individual movies, probably more newer stuff to be honest. But yeah, I wanted to get into it. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree. I hope you subscribe. Hope you follow. Hope you're along in the journey. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.